All right, hey there. So we are going to cover, this class is covering the exclusive right of sale listing agreement. This is the listing agreement that we use through the Florida Realtors, and the one we support and can give you advice on. And I've got all sorts of things. You should see a PDF below this class of this marked up highlighted version so you can kind of take a look at it and see. I'm going to try and keep it as brief as possible, but make sure you understand potential hurdles and pitfalls, but most of it's pretty straightforward. And once again, as always on any of these items, make sure you read the document in its entirety so you can get a full grasp of what's going on. Read it in its entirety before you even start this class, so at least you have some semblance of an idea what's going on. All right. So I'm going to start off and just get going right away. So at the very top here, you'll see my notes. It may seem obvious, but it's imperative that you determine that the true seller is the one authorizing the listing. Many times what happens is, is people will just trust somebody and say, oh yeah, my aunt's home and she left it to me in her will. Well, that's great, but I need authority and need documentation of that. And public records is good. And I want to get this out because this is my pat answer to anybody who asks me the question, hey Bob, I got a situation where it looks like it's an estate and I'm talking to one of the nieces and she says she has the right to sign for everybody, but there are 7 heirs, that are going to get a piece of this. Who needs to sign? All right, that's a loaded question, right? So it's impossible for us to know. Same thing if you get somebody that says, oh yeah, we own the property in an LLC. Well, that's great, but just like we did with the contract, we cannot verify that you are the right person to obligate the LLC unless we have documentation that proves it. Now, taking a step further, we are not authorized or in a legal position to make that determination. So here's what I always do. I always say start with the end, right? You're going to take this property, let's say it's 123 Main Street. You take the public records and you go to your title company of choice and ask them, hey, look, I'd like you to do a preliminary title search on this. And number 2, here's what I'm being told. But can you tell me, based upon your research and your preliminary title search, who will need to sign the deed at closing? That's starting with the end, right? At the end of the day, 3 months from now, we're sitting at a closing table. Who will be the person representing the seller, in this case, that would need to sign? Or it could be persons. Maybe it's 7 heirs, right? And because that's going to tell you who not only has to sign the deed at the end, but also who will need to sign every contract that comes in and also sign the listing agreement. And it could be one person, yes, based upon what we've seen and what they've provided. It shows that they are the executor of the estate, so they're allowed to sign, right, on behalf of everybody. Great. Or no, that doesn't say what they think it says, and we need 6 people to sign at the closing, so therefore we need 6 people to sign at the contract time, and then also 6 people to sign this listing agreement. So you have to get that covered on the front side. Same thing with the LLC. Hey, you got to get their, they should have an operating agreement that says, hey, so-and-so is allowed to bind the property on behalf of the LLC, or if it doesn't, then you got to get everybody who's a member of that LLC. But the title company should be able to tell you that. So I want to cover that from the very get-go. All right, you put in your Future Home Realty and you. We're going to cover later. I authorized you. You are an authorized agent of Future Home Realty. So where it says broker or authorized agent, you sign. If it says broker, you can go ahead and sign or initial there. I do not need to initial every listing agreement. Okay. All right. Read through this. It's pretty straightforward. All right. The only thing I'm going to note here is the beginning and terminating date. All right. Whether it be a 6-month listing, 3-month listing, whatever it is. All right. It's all well and good. But sometimes people get confused, say, well, if I'm listing it today, but we're not going to put it in the MLS until a week from now because we're not going to get pictures and all that stuff, then the listing is still today. It's active today, right? And they are acknowledging that you're not going to put it in the MLS for a week. And by the way, MLS mandates that you must must file a delay entry into MLS form with them and have the seller sign that if it's going to be delayed more than 48 hours. All right. That's because they're trying to avoid people taking pocket listings without telling the seller. They want to try and make all the money and they don't tell the seller that they're not going to put it in the MLS for a week. So that's where that all stemmed from. That being said, The earlier you put this on, people say, well, what if I just wait until a week from now to make that's fine, but realize that if the seller finds a buyer in this week, while you said, hey, look, I'm going to, date it for a week away from now, then we have no protection. Your commission is not protected, right? So my suggestion, list it immediately. Even if you're going to delay entry into the MLS, then use that form as required. Delay entry into the MLS. There's one already signed by me. That one will require my signature, but there's one already pre-signed by me in our forms. Okay. Going down, because of the street address of the property, the legal description of the property, of course. Okay. Put the full legal description per the public records. If the property be abundantly clear on personal property, including appliances. Okay, let's put everything out there. You know me, I want our contracts, and this is a contract, it's a listing contract, all right, to be as clear as possible, all right, that everything is up front. Occupancy, you're going to say if the property is occupied or not currently occupied by a tenant, all right, it's not whether it's occupied by a person, it's if it's occupied by a tenant, all right, and if it is, then you need to get a copy of that lease. All right, I make a note out here. If the property is occupied by, be sure to obtain a copy of the lease so potential buyers can be made aware, because tenants have rights as well. And if there is a 6-month lease on this thing, that still 6 months still remaining on a lease, then the tenant has a right to stay there no matter who owns the property. And the new owner will have to abide by the terms of that lease. So you need to get a copy of it so we can share that with potential buyers. Okay. All right. Listen to audio here regarding financing terms. All right. Again, these are the things the seller is willing to accept. If the seller is absolutely adamant and they're not going to take an FHA offer, then don't mark it. I suggest you mark everything. Hey, look, we can always deny any offer later. We can, deal with the specifics of a contract at a different time, but why are we trying to eliminate a certain, unless you know 100% this place is a tear down, there's no way FHA is going to lend on it, then you can avoid FHA and VA. Okay. This right here, on B, all right, is when seller is going to hold a purchase money mortgage. We think that's owner financing. All right. If that's the case and the seller's willing to do it, then I'm asking you to contact me first, because many people assume that just because the seller wants to hold the paper or be the lender, that they can. Well, a number one requirement of that is that the seller owns the property outright, that there is no existing mortgage or lien on the property. And some people do own their property outright, and they can do that. But if they don't, then their current mortgage, 99% of the time, has what's called a due on sale clause, which means if they transferred ownership without telling the bank, then the bank finds out about it, their current lender, then they can make a demand call on the loan, and the whole thing's due and payable. So they have to own it outright. If you're planning on doing any seller financing, or the seller wishes to offer that, I need you to check with me first. All right. Assumption of existing mortgage. I have never seen one in all my years. I've been doing it 27 now plus years in real estate, and have not seen any assumptions. On a rare case, if you get somebody that says, oh, my mortgage is assumable and so on and so forth, call me. All right. Here, this can part C tends to cause some confusion on occasion. Seller will pay mortgage discount points. I always put 0 in here, because this is not saying they won't. It just says if you put something in there, it could be like they get a hold of this, that it obligates them to do it. Whereas you want to take a look at any individual offer that comes in and determine whether or not the seller's willing to pay closing costs on behalf of the buyer on that contract, not on this listing agreement. All right. Read through this. Multiple listing service. I highlight some notes here that it basically says that we have to immediately list it in the MLS unless the proper waiver of entry has been signed. All right. By the way, MLS does not take this. They aren't joking around. They have now upped that fine to $2,500 if someone is found having not placed the property in the MLS within 48 hours and also not had a waiver signed by the buyer. Okay. Down here in red, I have a seller and broker associate. Okay. Please note that FHR, the seller has to initial each page. Note that this FHR allows the sales agent to sign listing agreements, and no broker signature is required. So you can just put your initials in there. Let's see. 6, broker authority. I have, this is not an MLS waiver. This would allow or sell. Okay. Yeah. Some people think that this is the broker or the MLS waiver. No, this is discussing whether or not the seller wants the property on the internet, i.e., Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, those kind of things. All right. I suggest they leave it. That's my, if they ask you your opinion, say, hey, look, the more exposure, the better, right? But if they want to opt out, there's a place in the MLS where we can elect to opt out, and they can choose one of things. They can put the property on, but no street address, or just flat out, I don't want it on the internet at all. It means it's going to be the MLS, but that's not the internet. That's an intranet, but the internet being things, public-facing sites. All right, um, and and if they choose that, by the way, if they choose, hey, I don't want it there, it says consumers who search for listings will not see information about the property. So that's, they just want to make sure they are going to double up and make sure the seller is fully aware of what's going on there. E through G, you can read through these things that you can do for sale. We have an addendum that we're going to go through as well. I can get information relating to the present mortgage. We got to know what the payoff is to help them and analyze, how much they're going to net. We're going to give them a market analysis. All right. Okay, so are we going to use a lockbox or not? All right, and it goes through, doesn't guarantee the, protection. We do the best we can. I always suggest the electronic lock boxes because we can track people's people coming in and going. But if they choose not to, then or if you want to use a coded lockbox where you have to hand out the code, that's fine, but it's not nearly as trackable. So let's see. Withhold verbal offers, withhold all offers. Once seller accepts a sales contract for the property, we kind of cover that as in our addendum as well. The reason is you have to have written notice. So if somebody provides a verbal offer and you say you have to present that offer, you say, no, I don't. Seller doesn't want to see verbal offers. Okay, do you have that in writing? If this box is checked, you can say, yes, I do, and even provide them with a copy of it if they need to see that portion. All right. And also, hey, look, we're no longer accepting any backups or further offers because we've accepted a contract. Because people, again, remember one of the first rules we learn in real estate school is what offers do you have to present? Any and all, right? Unless the seller has directed you in writing prior not to submit those offers. Virtual office websites. All right, these are whether or not the seller doesn't want automated a hyperlink to like a Z estimate and so forth. Again, I could care less. By now, if I were talking to a seller, I'd say, hey, look, let them look at a Z estimate. They're going to look at everything they want anyway, whether it's through our site or not, whether it's a hyperlink, they're going to go find it. And so, we just have to be prepared to defend it. If it's in our favor, then we like it. If not, then we'll just defend our price anyway. And same thing about authorizing third party to write reviews or comments. All right, seller obligations. All right, the seller is going to cooperate with us and help us do it. They're going to provide us with keys. We're going to inform the broker before leasing or putting a new mortgage on the property, and they're going to hold us harmless on this. Okay, and then against any of these interactions, this is kind of our CYA form. All right, it's kind of built into the contract. The listing agreement. Here, E through G here, if they are subject to FERPA, you need to just let them know, hey, look, you need to go find a FERPA expert. There is one by a company called Harding and Bell that's on our website at FHR University, great class. They can't go there, but they can certainly reach out to Harding and Bell and get everything done. Check out F. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to, fill out the seller's disclosure. Well, we require them to fill out a seller's disclosure, and if they refuse to, then, we consider not taking the listing. However, even if they don't fill it out, it says this thing that says they have to, all legally required, including all facts that materially affect the value of the property. Seller certifies and represents the seller knows no such material facts other than the following. If they knew something was up, they could put it in here. Now, again, they should put it in the seller's disclosure as well, and we would require them to do so. But because the buyer wouldn't be able to see this, and we don't know that that's a disclosure. And if they didn't, they put something here and didn't put it on seller's disclosure. Now you've been disclosed, and you need to put it on seller's disclosure so that the buyer can see that. And then again, there you just point this out to them that they need to talk to people about their tax ramifications, all that kind of stuff. FERPA, they need to talk to professionals regarding that. All right. Okay. Now here, this can be confusing, I guess, for some people. So first of all, we never have a discussion about standard commissions, right? You can put whatever you want. My only rule is that if we put it in the MLS, then we have to offer a 2% co-broke, minimum of a 2% co-broke being offered to the buyer agent / transaction broker, right? Here, just so you know, this is where I put an example of 6% where the total commission is going to go, right? They're going to listen. Yeah, but I'm only getting 3, and if no, the entire commission goes here. Okay, this is what the seller is willing to pay. We put 0 in because we don't allow options. If you do want to do an option, you better call me first. All right. No leases. Okay, we don't do leases here. Again, 0 because we're not doing a lease. If you are going to do a lease, then you have to have a prior approval from me, and we're not using this. There's a exclusive right to lease agreement as opposed to list for sale. All right. This basically says that we're due a commission. All right. So if they sell it to their niece, and we're 8 days into the listing agreement, we still are owed a commission. All right. This part in number 3, 180 days. Okay, that's what we call a protection period. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. This provides us the opportunity. Let's say you have a 6-month listing, and then it comes up. Let's say you have a 3-month listing, so 90 days. And on day 82, somebody shows the property for the first time. On day 89, they look at it a second time, right? And then all of a sudden, we notice that the buyer and seller kind of go off into a corner on their own, and then the buyer says, "Well, I'm not so sure I'm interested," and they walk away. Well, what the seller was thinking, hey, look, you know what? I could save 6% and I'll split that with you if we just wait till the day after tomorrow because my listing is expiring tomorrow. This protection period protects you, all right, in the event that someone who saw the property during the 90-day listing period comes back and for 100 days after the end of the listing agreement, the termination date, decides to buy the property. So we're protected there. However, there's a huge exception to this protection period, and I'll point it out later. Okay, so I'll tell you what it is now. Spoiler alert: it is if the property's terminated or expires. Right? We gone beyond this. If the property is relisted with another broker, then the protection period goes away. Period. That's it. Over. I know it is what it is. It's built into our thing. There's a reason for it, but it is what it is. All right. People get caught up in this retained deposits that technically 50% of any deposits are rightfully ours, so we can fall back on that. I've never had people collect it per se, but we can, and we can go through with that. All right. So here, remember 6% is what we put up in paragraph 8. That's the total commission, right? Now we're going to disclose to the seller how much we intend to offer a buyer's agent, a transaction broker, and so on and so forth. Okay, so cooperation with compensating. So the other one, in our example, was 6%. Let's say we're going to do 3% minus $295. That we're going to pass on a $295 fee to the listing or to the selling agent, right? That entire amount. I don't care if it doesn't matter that $295. Yes, we have to be completely upfront with the seller how much we're going to put in the MLS as a co-broke offering, and that's all it is. This is not an MLS fee. It's nothing else. This is an offer of compensation to other parties, right? So in this case, we're going to 3% minus $295 to a single agent, 3% minus $295 to a transaction broker, and 0% if they have no brokerage relationship. If they're just coming in saying, I'm related to them, I'm down here in Miami, I want you to do all the work, and I want my 3%. You can always negotiate it later, but you don't have to obligate yourself. All right? There are 3 different versions of this listing agreement. We use the one that's the single agent notice with agreement with transition to transaction broker. If you have questions on the single agency relationship, not only do we allow it, but we highly encourage single agency, but we have to agree to transition to transaction broker. I have a class on specifically on the agency relationship forms and why the benefits of being a single agent. You can listen to that, but that's what we're using here. Again, initials at the bottom. Go down. That's all transaction broker. Conditional termination. At seller's request, broker may agree to conditionally terminate this contract. If we can, this is where we would put a cancellation fee. You can put whatever you want in here. Some people I've seen put half the commission, like 1.5%. I've seen people put $500. Seen people put zero. Me myself, I'd say, hey, look, if you're not happy with me, then I'm willing to cancel it, but it's conditional, meaning that I'm not going to just release it if all of a sudden, hey, look, I'm going to cancel it because there's zero, so I can sell it to the guy who just saw it. All right, then that's not the case. All right. By the way, we're still protected in our protection period down here, even if we conditionally terminate. Right. Also note that in addition to this amount, let's say it is zero, you have the right to ask the seller to reimburse you for direct expenses, the cost to put up your sign, your professional photos, the yada, yada, yada. You can, if you have itemized listed that, you have the right, if you want to go there, to ask the seller to reimburse you for those things if they withdraw it. Okay. Let's see. Dispute resolution. This is they agree. The only thing I'm going to note here is it asks for a broker initial. You can put your own initials in there as well. Sales associate and broker. You can put them both. All right. Or leave it blank. I have no problem because you can go back to the video here and show them that I did this. You can read the miscellaneous stuff. All right. Nothing too important there. All right. I put this in as an example. Many agents do what we call a variable commission. Means, let's say, for example, you decided to take it for 6% commission, but you said to them, hey, look, and of that, I'm going to offer 3% minus $295 to the other side. Right. Let's say, though, you say, hey, if I find a buyer myself, I'm willing to do it for 5%. That's called a variable commission. Therefore, that box would be checked on the MLS entry sheet as a variable commission. That's what it means. It varies depending on who is what parties are involved, right? But here's an example of how you would do that. If any agent, that's the person, procures a buyer with no other agent involved, the total commission owed shall be reduced to 5%. That's it. I'm giving you an example. That's, something that could, you don't have to do this. So, but that's where you would, if the seller's asking, hey, well, how do I know that you're going to reduce it? And other than you just saying you will, here's where you can put it in writing. Okay. And you have to mark it as variable commission. All right. So the overall, that paragraph 8, 6% gets reduced to 5% in this case because no other agents. You're not co-broking with anybody else there. All right. Then finally down here, seller signature, their authorized sales associate or broker. Again, you can sign this. All right. I don't need to sign it. And here, this is huge. Many agents miss this. First of all, I think we all know we have to give a copy of this to the seller. A lot of times it's done electronically because they're e-signing it. That's great. Okay. So you can, I guess it wouldn't be personal delivery. I would call that by email. All right. You have to put a date in here. All right. One thing when we got an audit about a year ago from DBPR, that's one thing that we weren't mandating people do on their listing agreements, and we are now, that you've got to tell us when it was done. By the way, personal delivery, it's hard to prove, right? I would suggest you do it by some means that you can show that it was delivered and make that date match the date that you put in here. Okay, but we require that to be filled out. Again, initials at the bottom of each page. Cool. That's the listing agreement. Now I'm going to real quickly go to FHR's addendum to the listing agreement. Not a whole lot marked up here, other than I want to point out, I just say listen to the audio. We just reiterate some things. Owner agrees to put a sold sign once you've accepted it. Do they want that, or do they want to continue on, right? Again, this is all just stuff that we have to have in writing if that's what to do. This one, number 2, just gives us the authority. Let's say they're on a cruise and they just say, oh, let's reduce the price. I'm not a place where I can sign anything. With their verbal permission, you can make the price change, but it must be changed. Any change in status will be followed in writing with the status change form. If you're going to use words like desperate, owner must sell, divorce forced to sell, foreclosure, any of that, you must have permission from the owner, so they agree or do not agree. Additional copy of the house keys to be kept by you in case somebody loses one. you know, that it's in the lockbox. It's the only one's in the lockbox, and then now the agent who showed it says I can't find it anymore. It dropped it in the grass, and now it's lost or whatever. You can, but you have to have a permission to keep an extra set of keys. Again, whether or not you're going to use a lockbox. Again, this is our own version. We've been doing this for years. Enter into the MLS, delay entry into the MLS. If you're going to delay entry, you're going to also do the MLS form, but you can mark it here as well. This just says that the owner's been made aware, so you need to provide them a copy of the idea of a home warranty. You know, there are home warranty plans that even protect the current owner during the listing period. So you might, but again, this is all because we get a better break on our E&O when I can answer the question, how many times are sellers offered a home warranty? The answer is 100% because we mandate this form and they've been made aware. Whether they accept it or not is here nor there. Sometimes people push back on this. Is not the end of the world. We have other means, but we just says that, hey, look, if we have a rightfully owed commission, we may place a lien on the property, and they're giving us authority to do so, and then hold harmless that people coming in, anybody we recommend to them, so on and so forth. That's our standard hold harmless is there. Again, signed by the seller, Future Home Realty, and then listing agent name, and you can put your name in there. All right, only needs to be signed by the seller. And then finally, I'm going to include, just real quickly, we get this question a lot. Well, how do I make a change to the listing agreement? Down the road, what if we can do a price change? What if we want to terminate it? Seller wants to know that it's officially terminated. You're going to do what's called a modification to listing agreement. It's in the either Form Simplicity or Transaction Desk, but it's definitely there. All right. It's just, here's the seller, here's the broker, you know, again, Future Home Realty, and then any agent, your name. All right, and it's exclusive right of sale. You're going to check which one applies to, because this could be used if it was a lease agreement as well. But in this case, a right of sale listing agreement. If we're going to change the termination date, that's you would check that box. The price and terms, the amount we're going to offer the compensation to the broker, right? Meaning if we're going to reduce the commission, increase the commission, so on and so forth. Compensation if owed to broker if property is transferred within so many days after. That's kind of referencing the protection period. Again, this is only if you're making any changes. This is if we're not going to change from that 50% of the deposit to something else. Leasing fee shouldn't really apply. Cancellation fee if we're changing that. All right. And then here, this is a conditionally terminate or unconditionally. Conditional termination means that we are taking it out of the MLS, we're saying it doesn't exist, but our protection period's in place and nobody else. We're going to leave it as a conditional termination in the MLS, which means nobody can list it during the initial term of the remaining term of the listing agreement, right? That's all well and good. Most of the time, people are looking for what we call an unconditional, right? Unconditional allows them to you mark that, and then somebody the next minute can go in and relist the property. As I mentioned before, realize that your protection period still is in place under either one of these, but the minute someone relists the property, our protection period goes away. It is what it is, but you need to know that and be aware of it. Okay. Any other terms that you're going to put in here? You can do that if you're modifying the listing in some way. All right, and then once again, broker or authorized sales associate, and just like on the listing agreement, a copy must be delivered and noted how it was. Again, having something in writing that's provable, i.e., here's an email I sent you that is giving you a copy of the modification to our listing agreement is in place. All right. All right, wanted to make it a little shorter. I was under 30 minutes though, so hopefully that explains it. Hopefully it'll knock out some things for your questions on all of these, but most specifically on this, the exclusive brokerage listing agreement. And there we go. All right, thanks guys. If you got questions, as always, you can reach out and let us know. This will be on FHR University. All three of these documents should be in below the class along with my highlighted commented versions.